to the show. Today I want to make things crystal clear about a lot of common misconceptions when it comes to copywriting, and in particular copywriting in photography. Now, this is something that I get asked repeatedly about a lot as a professional photographer. So today, this is everything that you need to know. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a lot of clarity on how copywriting in photography affects you. How are you doing today, you beautiful thing? I'm Laura and this is Moi TV, the channel filled with personal branding tips, industry insights and trends, and lots of headshots inspiration. You should definitely think about subscribing to my channel if you are an entrepreneur who takes branding very seriously. You're going to want to make sure that you hit the bell when you do that, so that you're notified every single Friday when a new episode drops. There's a good chance that if you've never really worked with a professional photographer before and you don't operate inside the creative industries, then the whole business around copyright infringement feels a bit confusing to you. Having studied this at great length when I was doing my photography degree, and then practicing over the 10 years that I've been in the photography world on applying this law and all of the rules to real life clients, I'm here today to try and help clear up a lot of common misconceptions that I've heard about over the years and that have actually caused the odd heated debate here and there. Let's go. Let's just start off by saying breaching copyright law is a criminal offence, and we're protected here in the UK by Copyright, Designs and Patents Act of 1988. Usually in the first instance, when in breach of this copyright law, you're going to expect to be contacted by the person whose creative you've used without permission. In the milder cases, you're going to be asked to take it down and or correct it. Maybe you need to put the correct right to a credit on there, or you need to pay the person whose stuff you've taken and make things right again. In the worst instance, you're going to hear from that person's lawyer and it's going to go straight into a legal proceeding. The maximum term of imprisonment for committing copyright infringement or piracy is up to 10 years. No defined amount is given as the maximum fine paid when you commit copyright infringement or piracy here in the UK. Every research place I've gone to just says substantial penalties, which I think is quite scary. In the US though, it's a little bit different. So maximum time served in jail is 5 years, and maximum penalty on biggest offences can be $250,000. So that's all the facts for you. Let's get into the common misconceptions. I'm in the photo, so I get copyright. No, this is wrong. All copyright laws on all the different lands around the world state that copyright law is created to protect the creator of the piece. So that means if you're in the photo, there's a very strong chance that you didn't take the photo. So the photo of you belongs to the person that created it. This goes to lengths as well. So if I set up my camera in a studio that I was paying for and I slaved away for hours getting a beautiful lighting scape set up, tested all the lights, made sure that everything was perfect, and then you came into my studio and took a photo of me, technically that image would belong to you under copyright law. Now, this isn't my first rodeo, so that's never going to happen if you were working with me, because if I was asking you to operate my equipment in my studio, I would be wanting to make sure that we're both protected in that particular scenario. So I'd be getting you to sign a photographer's assistant release, which states any work created in the time that you're assisting for me belongs to Laura Pearman Photography. In addition to that, I'm also going to make sure that you are fully covered in my insurances, so that's professional indemnity, public liability, and for all of the equipment and any awful things that could happen to you when you are around my equipment. So we're both protected, but I still own the photo. Yeah, but I'm a professional model. This rule still applies. This same piece of copyright law would still apply if you're a professional model in a photograph. You could argue that if you are indeed a professional model, I'm going to be paying you for your expertise and your skills skills to be featured in one of my creations. But I'm still going to own that creation under my copyright. Now, because we're talking about two professionals working together, other things need to apply in this scenario. Now, I've already hinted there I'm going to be paying you, but the exact amount that I'm paying you for with the expectations that I have, and in order to protect us both, I'm going to make sure that you sign a contract of work before we get to shoot day, or I get your agent to sign a contract of work before shoot day. And within that contract, it will state that you release the image of you for me to own the copyright of. The final layer on this imaginary scenario needs to make sure that when you have that image, you can then use that image to go and book yourself more work as a professional model and have it in your book that you physically take to go-sees, or that your agent can have a copy of it on the website underneath your profile. So as part of that pre-agreement booking form, I'm going to make sure that you have enough of a license to use the copyright of this image for commercial gains. And that basically means that you're going to be able to use that image, your agent will be able to use that image to generate you and them money. What if I didn't know that you'd taken a photo of me and then I found out about it and I wasn't really happy at all? Okay, this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky, and actually I like to think that it also gets a little bit political at this stage as well. If you've never heard of the photographers movement, I'm a photographer, not a terrorist, then I would love you to take a beat and go and take a look at what this is all about. You can find that on www.phnat.org. In the year 2000, law was changed around terrorism because of several different world events that involved catastrophic terrorist acts. Now, a very specific section of one of these laws has had a really damaging effect on photographers. The website that I just referenced does a really good job of showing lots of different events that have happened to poor photographers where this law has been used against them. And sadly, it's being misunderstood and misused in a lot of cases where there are photographers who are trying to document the world around them. These types of photographers could be architectural photographers or documentary photographers who are trying to capture life at this moment in time to add to the history of photography that we have, but unfortunately they're being arrested and having their equipment taken away from them. So go and check that out if that's something that interests you. Let's get back to our scenario then. So let's imagine that I've taken a photograph of you and you're in the background of my photograph and you're looking a little bit worse for wear, and let's just say it's at a music festival or a really big event. Under copyright law, you're not really going to have a claim. And the reason for this is if you go and take a look at any large scale events, websites, or even sometimes on the ticket when you've bought a ticket to go to that event, it will state that as part of the legal agreement of you buying that ticket and attending that event, you release your image to the event provider to then use the image of you enjoying their event for their commercial gain and future marketing. So technically it's like writing a model release, but it's a model release by default. Now, if you really majorly objected to it, I don't know, maybe you're wanted by the law or something and you can't be seen getting on down at Glastonbury, then you can contact Glastonbury or any other music event and state that you want your image to be blurred out of every single photo, but you're going to have to sign a lot of paperwork to do that. And then the event organizer is going to need to work with the photographer to make sure that your face and any image of you is either blurred out, edited out, or sometimes pixelated like what you see on Crime Watch. Even if my hypothetical photograph of you at the festival presented you in a negative light, you still wouldn't be able to make any kind of claims on copyright law. Sure, you could then make a claim about damages against you and your reputation or your livelihood, and then that might change the way that the photograph is used, but fundamentally I would still own all copyright of that image. Taking it up to an even more extreme circumstance, even if I was a pap and I was following you around and I was harassing you and your family to get photographs of you at your most vulnerable, I would still own all of the copyright to those images, and that would be how I made my living. seedy as it is, I would still be able to make a living by selling those images to be featured in some press. As you know, look at any paper or any magazine, and this is a legitimate industry that occurs, unfortunately. But a lot of celebrities find it really hard to make any claims about copyright, and instead they go down the route of trying to seek damages. Okay, so all of that being said, I personally think that it's really important you just put a common sense hat on when thinking about these kinds of scenarios, especially when it comes to scenarios like this happening in real life events. If I had shot an award-winning piece of documentary photography and it had you in this urban landscape and I was making this beautiful point about politics or something, but then you contacted me to tell me that this had caused you upset or actual damages, then I would enter into a negotiation with you whereby we could come to an agreement before getting all of the legal stuff involved. I would like to think that there are good people out there and you can solve problems on a human-to-human level before engaging with the law. It's okay though, because I've cropped it down a little bit. This statement never ceases to send me into a real spin. In fact, I once had a blogger say this to me at an event and things got pretty heated in our following discussion. Okay, so imagine this then. You're at a famous art gallery and you're looking at the piece de resistance, like the thing that the gallery is known for having, and you take a photograph of that on your phone or on your camera. Then you want to put it on your blog, and you think if you crop it down a bit and throw a filter on or do a little bit of Photoshop work, it's okay because the rendition of that original artwork is now your rendition, therefore the copyright belongs to you because you were the creator of the second rendition. Wrong. There is a body of, there's a 4-part law in America called the Fair Use Law, and this would argue that you could quote this piece, like say it's a really famous painting, one of your favorite paintings, and if you referenced it correctly and you backlinked it to the gallery and you stated that the painting was created by the painter in the date that it was made, you would be okay to use that, probably because of all of the different clauses of fair use law. It's in the common zeitgeist. Like if it was featured on the news, for instance, and it flashed up here when the news reporter was speaking, it would be fine. The news, the broadcaster wouldn't be subject to copyright infringement because it's in the news. If you then put the rendition, your rendition of the original artwork on your website for sale, then you're talking about copyright infringement. Because it's a rendition of an original idea that you copied, you are then infringing on the original creator's copyright. This is why Mariah makes so much money at this time of year. It doesn't matter whether she's singing the seasonal song or it's a bunch of chipmunks or a cartoon Santa. It's her song, so she gets the money. I've compiled this quick list of 5 things to remember as a modern entrepreneur when you're thinking about copyright in photography and how it might affect you in your business. Number 1 is photography contracts. So when you work with a professional photographer, there will most definitely be a contract of work, and in that contract of work, everything will be made abundantly clear to you in advance about copyright and photography copyright law. Number 2 is event releases. As a modern entrepreneur, you're probably going to be wanting to attend more and more events to help with your networking. Now, if you're going to an event and you're planning on creating your own content at that event, you need to make sure that you have asked the event organizer about purchasing a license, got their official permission in writing to create the content that you want to create, and also make sure that you're covered by the event hosts working with the venue. Number 3 is when you want to feature people on your website in photographs. When in doubt, make sure that you always have copies of model release forms. Now, if you've decided that you want to handle this instead of your photographer handling this, trust me when I tell you, make sure that all model release forms are signed in advance of shoot day. If you try and do it retrospectively, it's gonna be a nightmare. Trust me. Number 4, when you want to use photographs to make money in your business. When this is the case for you, you want to make sure that you have commercial license to use the images that have been created for you. And number 5 is do as your photographer asks you in your license to use documentation. If you don't include that backlink and you don't put the correct caption underneath the image when it has been used, that has been asked of you in your license to use documentation, you run the risk of being subject to a copyright claim being taken against you. And here's 5 things to remember if you're a professional photographer like me and you want to make sure that everything you do is done right. Number 1 is use proper contracts before you do the job. Number 2, when in doubt, get them to sign a model release. Number 3, always ask about permits before you get to shoot day. And if you're given a really horrible form to fill in that is filled with red tape and bureaucracy, smile, fill it in, do what they want you to so that nothing happens to hijack your shoot on shoot day. Number 4, take the time to put in the metadata into your photos before the client even gets a preview. This way, you are fully protected in advance. And number 5, get yourself onto this sneaky peek list. Veriten are a brand new copyright management service that work for people like us professional photographers. They check the entire internet for you to make sure that nobody else out there who has worked with you ages ago in the past or last week is infringement of the copyright law that you gave to them in their license documentation. Then, and this is the really cool bit, they go to all of the trouble to make sure that the legal stuff is handled on your behalf, which saves you a lot of hassle and a lot of pain. This makes that previous nightmare that we've all had on checking up on clients and whether or not they're being naughty or not so much easier. It takes away all that pain. Now, if you want to get onto the preview list for this, you need to go to www.veriten.com/Laura. Follow that link and you're going to be able to find out lots more information on this service as well as access a little bonus that I've set up for you. Now, before you go anywhere, don't forget to subscribe. Mwah.